Hey there, language lovers. Welcome to the very first episode of English Path Studio. I'm Eli, your host, and today we're launching this brand new podcast with a topic that literally every single English learner struggles with at some point. Have you ever tried talking to a native speaker and just felt like, man, their words are flying by on a totally different frequency? You hear the sounds, but they just sort of blur together into this massive, overwhelming wall of noise. Words get skipped, sentences collide, and by the time you translated just one single thought in your head, the conversation has already moved on. It is incredibly frustrating, and honestly, it makes a lot of people want to give up entirely. But if that sounds familiar, don't worry, because you are in exactly the right place today. We're diving deep into the mechanics of fast English to show you exactly how it works under the hood. And the best part? Absolutely no intense grammar memorization is required. Joining me today to unpack all of this is Elena, our resident fluency coach and linguistics expert. Welcome to our debut show, Elena.
Thanks, Eli. It is so wonderful to be here today. And you hit the nail right on the head. That frustrating speeding train feeling is incredibly common, and it's not because you have bad English or lack vocabulary. It's simply because there is a massive yawning gap between the perfectly enunciated textbook English we are taught in school and the messy, highly rhythmic, connected speech that native speakers actually use out on the street. School teaches us that every word is a separate island, but in real life, words are more like waves in a continuous ocean.
Textbook English versus street English. That is a huge distinction, and I love that ocean analogy. Can you explain why street English sounds so incredibly fast to us? Are native speakers just talking at the speed of light, or is there a specific linguistic process happening when we talk?
Actually, it's a common misconception that native speakers are just talking faster. We don't speak at a faster rate, it's that we use vocal shortcuts. We naturally drop sounds and swallow letters to make our speech more efficient. It's a natural linguistic phenomenon called connected speech. When words meet in a sentence, the ending sound of one word blends into the beginning sound of the next word. We morph the sounds so the whole sentence just flows smoother. For example, let's take a standard textbook sentence like, I should have told you earlier. Every single word there is distinct, and you can hear the clear gaps. But in reality, a native speaker will blend that entire sentence into, I should have told you earlier. Hear that? We drop the V sound in have and change you to yai.
Oh wow, I should have told you earlier. It really does sound like one giant word. Let me try that. I should have told you earlier. Did I get it right, or did I sound like a robot trying to speak human?
You got it perfectly, Eli. That was excellent. You naturally join the words. When you do that, you stop sounding like a textbook and start sounding like a local. Another classic example is, what do you want to do? In textbook English, it's very clear. But in natural connected speech, it becomes, what you want to do? We blend what do you into whatcha and want to into wanna. It's exactly that dropping and morphing of sounds that creates that super intimidating speeding train blur we just talked about. If your ears are trained to look for what do you want and to, you'll completely miss the message because your brain is waiting for boundaries that simply don't exist.
What you want to do? It really feels like we are learning a whole new language here. But here is my concern, Elena. If native speakers are constantly blending all these sounds together, how on earth is an English learner supposed to train their ears to understand them? If you can't hear where one word ends and the next begins, it feels like trying to read a book with no spaces between the words.
It really does feel like that, but there is a specific technique we can use called chunking. This is basically a method where you train your brain to hear a full phrase, let's say, how are you doing? Or, what are you doing? As one single unified block of sound rather than separate words. When you start grouping words into these chunks of meaning, a really cool thing happens. You literally stop translating word by word in your head.
Stop translating word by word? That sounds like the holy grail of language learning. But how does chunking actually work inside the brain? If I hear "what you doing," how does my brain know it means "what are you doing" without translating it first?
Think of it like reading. When you look at a billboard, you don't read each letter individually. You see the whole word or even the whole phrase at once. Chunking does the same thing for your ears. Instead of processing what, then are, then you, then doing, your brain hears "what you doing" as a single package of information. Your brain works way faster and more efficiently, catching the meaning almost instantly, just like a native speaker does. You skip the translation step entirely because you associate the chunk of sound directly with the concept of asking someone what they are doing.
That makes total sense. So, we need to train our ears to recognize those packages of sound. But what about the physical side of speaking? Sometimes my mouth feels completely locked up when I try to copy those fast native rhythms. My tongue just gets twisted, and I end up sounding like I have a mouthful of marbles.
That is completely normal. Speaking a new language requires physical muscle memory, just like playing an instrument or learning a sport. Your facial muscles and tongue are used to moving in a certain way for your native language, so you literally have to train them to move differently for English. To build that muscle memory, the source material highly recommends a daily practice called shadowing or the echo method. It's a simple 4-step exercise using short audio or video clips.
Shadowing. I've heard a lot about it, but I'm never quite sure if I'm doing it right. Can you walk us through those 4 steps in detail, Elena? Let's make it super clear for our listeners.
Of course. Let's break it down step by step. Step 1. Listen to a short clip like 10 to 15 seconds of a movie, a podcast, or a news report without any subtitles. Just close your eyes and catch the overall rhythm and flow of the words. Step 2. Listen to the exact same clip again, but this time flip the subtitles or transcript on. This helps you connect the sounds you just heard to the actual printed words. Step 3. Pause the audio after every single sentence. And finally, step 4. Repeat that sentence out loud, trying to match the speaker's voice as closely as possible.
Okay, that sounds simple enough. But is there a secret to making it work? I feel like if I just read the subtitles, I'm just reading out loud, which doesn't seem to help my pronunciation that much.
You're absolutely right, Eli. And that is the mistake most people make. Here's the kicker. Don't just casually read the words. You must mimic the exact speed, emotion, and tone of the speaker. If they sound excited, you sound excited. If they sigh, you sigh. If they pause, you pause. This forces your mouth, tongue, and lips to move exactly like a native speaker's, and it trains your brain to process and produce the language in real time.
Ah, so it's not just repeating the words, it's acting. You have to become the speaker. Let's try it right now. If you say a line, I'll try to shadow you. How about a line from our video transcript?
Sounds like a plan. Let's use this sentence. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly. I'll say it, and you mimic my exact rhythm. Ready? Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly.
Okay, here goes. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly. Wow, that actually felt different. I was trying to match your emphasis on fast and clearly rather than just pronouncing the words.
Exactly, you caught the emotional emphasis. That is the magic of shadowing. But what about when we are out in the real world having a live conversation? We obviously can't pause and shadow people in real time without looking very strange.
Yeah, definitely don't try to shadow people in the middle of a business meeting or a coffee shop. For real-world conversations, we need to use intent-based phrase grouping, instead of freezing up when we need to speak, which we've all done, right? We can rely on a cheat sheet of advanced native-level phrases grouped by conversational intent. Intent-based phrase grouping? That sounds like a cheat code. Give us some examples of how we can use this in everyday conversations.
Think about conversational intent. When you need to show agreement, instead of defaulting to a plain, boring yes, you can say, sounds like a plan. If you need to show uncertainty, instead of panicking, you can say, I'm not sure, or let me check. And if you make a mistake, instead of apologizing profusely, just drop a simple, no worries.
No worries. I use that one all the time. It really does take the pressure off. What about other phrases? Like, how do native speakers keep a conversation flowing smoothly without sounding awkward?
We use what we call conversational glue. These are short, punchy, high-impact phrases that show real emotional intelligence and cooperation. Phrases like, let me know, take your time, keep me posted, sounds great, and I'm on it. By injecting these into your daily interactions, you instantly elevate your English. They make the person talking to you feel comfortable and at ease.
That is so true. When someone tells me take your time or keep me posted, I feel like they are really listening and collaborating with me. But Elena, here's the biggest hurdle for most of our listeners. Time. People have jobs, families, chores. They don't have 2 hours a day to study connected speech or practice shadowing. How can a busy person build a lasting fluency habit?
This is where the third pillar comes in, mind and the fluency habit. The big secret is that you do not need to sit down for stressful hours-long study sessions. In fact, that's often counterproductive because it leads to burnout. Instead, you want to shift your focus to daily low-pressure immersion. And a brilliant way to do this is a technique called internal narration.
Internal narration? What is that? It sounds like having a mini podcast inside your own head.
That's exactly what it is. Internal narration simply means quietly describing your normal, everyday actions inside your own head in English. For example, when you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking in your native language, you think in English. I'm making my breakfast right now. I'm pouring my coffee. As you walk out the door, you think, I'm walking to work. It's a nice day.
Wow, so you were basically narrating your life like a movie character. Does that really work? What if you run into a word you don't know? Like, what if you don't know the word for kettle when you're making tea? Do you stop and look it up?
Great question. No, you don't stop. If you don't know the word kettle, you just describe it in English. I'm putting water in the metal thing to make it hot. This is an incredibly important skill called circumlocution, describing a word you don't know. It teaches your brain to keep moving and stay in English, rather than shutting down and switching back to your native language.
That is incredibly practical. And it takes zero extra time because you are doing it while doing things you would be doing anyway. So, Elena, if you had to summarize the ultimate secret to all language learning, what would it be?
It all boils down to this. Consistency matters way more than perfection. You absolutely have to let go of the fear of making mistakes. That fear is what holds most learners back. If you rely on small daily habits, just 5 minutes of shadowing or a little internal narration while you drink your morning coffee, every single moment of practice counts. It compounds over time into absolutely massive results.
That is such a powerful insight. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly, expressing your ideas confidently, and connecting your thoughts naturally. Speed is just a natural byproduct of being comfortable with the language. When you prioritize connecting with people rather than being perfect, true fluency follows on its own.
Well said, Eli. Exactly. Focus on connection, not perfection.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today's episode. Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one actionable prompt to think about. How are you going to incorporate English into your daily routine tomorrow? Seriously. What is one small, specific way you can start immersing your ears, your mouth, and your mind in the language? Think about it, try it out, and watch your fluency completely transform.
Yes, give it a try. Thank you so much for having me, Eli. And to everyone listening, keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Thanks, Elena. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Until next time, keep walking English Path Studio. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.